right, John, you graduate from college and you spend 2 years at a money management firm. When did the coaching thing jump in there? And was it more, I want to coach, or I'm not sure I want to do this money management thing anymore?
No, I always thought I would be a high school coach. I mean, that was sort of my dream coming through. And I went to a really high academic university that like I got funneled into, the finance degree and economics was my major. And all the guys around me, they're signing bonuses out of college, like the fall of their college, to go work for different firms. And then my sister was in San Francisco. She was a professor. I can't remember. I guess that was when she was at University of San Francisco at the time. And so I just went out there for the summer and, ran out of my graduation money, was enjoying the summer, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Had chosen not to go right into coaching at that stage. And then I was like, man, I got to go get a real job. I ran out of money. I love San Francisco. And so I got something in finance. And, I loved my weekends. I loved San Francisco. I didn't end up loving that. And I kind of knew when, the guys in all the cubicles were all kind of, a bunch of Ivy League guys that and girls that had played sports. They loved athletes in kind of the West Coast, Wall Street group. And yet they were reading the Wall Street Journal and I was reading USA Today, looking at the sports section. I knew I could be good, but not great. And so I'm sort of a failed finance guy. I got blessed. Our company got bought out. I worked for LGT Asset Management and Prince of Liechtenstein owned it and got bought out by a firm out of Houston. And so I kind of had the golden ticket, a 6-month severance package at age 24 to kind of, refocus on what I want to do with my life. I took off to Alaska for 2 months, drove up from San Francisco up to Alaska with my fly rod, mountain bike, skis, and just kind of did the outdoor thing. All that also was inspired by my high school coach. I mean, I thought I'd be a high school coach. I thought I'd coach at Marist High School in Atlanta where I played. My high school coach there's arguably the best coach ever to come out of the state of Georgia. And he taught outdoor ed, that was inspired by him. I go do that. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try coaching. And that's when my career, I added Bob Johnson into my world. I put out like 250 resumes out there. And Steve Lavin was one of them that replied to me.
Before we get to that part, how in 1998, in sort of the pre-internet era of the world, do you know where to send 250 resumes?
Yeah, actually, the World Wide Web had just kind of come around. Email, I didn't have email till my senior year in 1996. So I don't even recall. That's so long ago now. I'm 49. I don't even remember where I found all this stuff. But I just started mailing everybody. And I had some dead time where like I was kind of dead man walking with our job with the buyout. So we're kind of managing our clients, but not, it was what it was. But man, great situation. Ended up taking on a D3 assistant job with Bob Johnson, and Rob Douster actually did a really cool article on sort of that tree of coaches, where there's 5 of us almost in a row that are now active Division I head coaches. Mike Young being sort of the godfather of that group is now at Virginia Tech, but it was like getting my PhD in leadership every single day. I mean, his dad was chief of staff for the Army during Vietnam. He was a Army Ranger. Just unbelievable stories. I mean, there was, it'd probably be one day every 2 weeks. I was his only assistant, and he'd come in and say, "Hey, John, no basketball today. Here's a book. Read it, and I'll meet you up on my deck overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains in Appalachia, and we're gonna smoke cigars and drink a Foster's and talk about whatever it was. It might be a leadership book, might be a history book, might be basketball, but rarely did we do that. It was more about life. And He really took on the life skills of his Emory and Henry players, and sort of that Renaissance man kind of mentality with these guys. And I've really tried to emulate that and pay it forward. And, like this summer we did ballroom dancing. We did 3 golf lessons. We did etiquette class, dining etiquette class. Our NIL seminar stuff is more based on our personal branding, and how do we do that? And we had 4 different sessions. And then, how do you get the second job after your pro career is over? And so I'm really proud of what we've been able to do with that. And I think that's really helped us with our retention and kind of building special in our program.
I talked with Nathan Davis from Bucknell, one of those guys on the Bob Johnson tree there at Emory and Henry. And he said it was just an amazing experience. When you got there though and started doing the work, the basketball work, was it everything you hoped it would be?
You mean at Emory and Henry?
At Emory and Henry, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I made $5,000. That was my salary. I don't know if you can call it a salary. That's more of a stipend, isn't it?
Sure. It's an allowance.
I didn't have housing or anything. And then how many people go? I mean, literally, I went to college coaching for 4 digits. Nobody ever says, "Hey, I'm working for 4 digits," do they? And actually that was the second time, 2 times in my career, I took over the desk and the house of Nathan Davis. I did it at Colgate too. I know. So that was kind of a cool story of doing that with Nathan. He was the same year at me at Randolph-Macon. I was at WNL. And so we were the same year point guards. He was a much better player than me. Probably got some video someplace on a VHS to show it. But no, it was more than I expected and wanted out of it. I mean, that's probably why I still thought I was going to end up going back to high school and working at Marist. Actually, his son, who played for us, ended up going and being an assistant at Marist for a couple of years when, after I coached with Coach Johnson. But it was amazing.
2 years there, and then you get the chance to go to College of Charleston.
Yeah, and there is nobody more detailed and organized than John Kress. And so I've been very blessed to work for, high level coaches and play for them. I mean, Vern Canfield in college at WNL, and then, Ron Bell at Marist High School. But I mean, John Kress is phenomenal. I mean, so organized. It was a machine there. Not to mention, I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's hard to screw up your recruiting at College of Charleston. It's like 70% female, or at least it was at the time. Really good academic school, beautiful city. But he had built quite a tradition there and was super organized. What a basketball coach. But that's the thing I really take from him, was his organization. And I take a lot of pride in being able to stack details and being organized. I think that's a big part of being consistent, which I feel like we've been at Fort Wayne. But that comes from John Kress.
What was the adjustment like going from an Emory and Henry to going to the D1 level?
Well, the first thing was, it was a pay cut from my $5,000 stipend at College of Charleston. I got an apartment and a meal plan with no cash attached. So went to Citadel grad school. I mean, I wanted to get my master's or my MBA at the time, but really I needed the student loan to pay the other bills. It was different because it was a larger staff, which was cool. The camaraderie you had. I mean, I worked for Nathan. I worked with Nathan Davis's assistant coach, Paul Harrison, who went to WNL with me. He was the one who kind of got me in the door there. And I mean, he's the best guy I've ever been with who's on the floor coaching. I mean, he was a great, I shared an office with him, and, he was phenomenal, sort of tutoring me in how to present to a group. But had a great coaching staff there. Phil Kane, Ben Betts. Actually, Ben Betts came and worked as an assistant when I became a head coach. He was one of the guys that joined me in my staff here in Fort Wayne. But, working with other assistant coaches, kind of joining their tree, having that camaraderie was huge. And then just the excitement of, I mean, we beat UMass that year. We beat TCU with Billy Tubbs coach, and we win the Southern Conference, which was sort of I mean, actually, Coach Kress never lost. He won the regular season every year as a Division I coach. I mean, it's amazing. Won like 92% of his home games. Amazing. And I still remember we're at the Charlotte Coliseum. Forte steals a pass to win the game. I mean, we had the ball and down a possession in the Charlotte Coliseum to beat Carolina and lose the game at the buzzer. And we're going back to the hotel, and Charleston fans are like, grab us at the door, a couple guys, and like, God, how'd you lose that game? I'm like, that's Carolina. They were ranked number 1 in the country that year. So great tradition. And Coach Kress is an unbelievable coach. And we had really talented, good players too. Jody Lumpkin was our center that year. Phenomenal players.
1 year there, and then you're off to Florida to go to Stetson. Went to high school with Derek Waugh. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was really cool. I mean, he was a senior when I was an 8th grader. I was old for my class. He was really young. We actually played Little League baseball against each other. That was really cool working with a friend, that had similar backgrounds. We had similar friends growing up in high school. He had a little bit of a similar tree to me. He was went to Furman, was a great player at Furman, but then, went on to law school at Wake Forest, practiced law for a year before he got into coaching. And, that probably was a piece to inspire me. That year that I took off to get into coaching, he had just made that move. And I was fishing actually the spring before I made the move with Coach Bell, our high school coach in Oregon. We had done a week long on the Deschutes River fly fishing. And, he was telling me how much, Derek enjoyed that. So the guy who had similar background to me, that was awesome. It was a great 8 years there. And I mean, he let me go. Like, he was like, hey, here's some of the things I need you to do. And he just let me have the freedom to go run with it. And, that was really cool. I mean, we recruited some really good players coming through there. Our team camp, like, I had a great experience kind of developing the camp stuff. I mean, we were, pretty underfunded there. We had to fundraise for one of our coaching assistants through camps, and we got our team camp up to 110 teams with 17 different courts running all at one time. And what a lesson that was. We'd go June, literally we'd check a camp in on Sunday night. It would check out on Thursday. We check in a new group on Thursday, check them out again on Sunday, and do it all over again. I lived in the dorms all summer long, running camp after camp after camp, and hiring different dudes and referees. And I mean, it was a great experience. And I was, I got to just kind of own that stuff. He was a great guy to work for, and really got to grow up in coaching together. I mean, we were both, young. He was the youngest head coach at the time. So that was a great experience.
And you were finally getting paid, which I'm sure was.
Yeah, and I got paid a little bit too. Met my wife down there too, which was phenomenal. I mean, that's been a great run for the two of us as coaches together. It's been really cool just sharing our experiences. I mean, there's very few households that has as much coaching experience as the two of us. And we're, probably talking about too much. And we got, so many, things that are shared. I mean, my core values, if you look in the back here up on the wall up there, I tried as hard as I possibly could. She was the head coach before me, to come up with my own power words that represent our core values. I mean, I reached out to all sorts of coaches trying to collect different information, and I could not figure out four better words than my wife did. Now I probably had a little bit of, shared, we probably talked about it at dinner at some point, but man, I mean, I borrow stuff from her all the time. She's a great coach. I just steal from her.
It's rare, especially when guys are making the climb, that they spend 8 years at any one specific stop as an assistant. What kept you there and comfortable for that long?
It's something that I think has made me really successful in Fort Wayne too, is that I've tried to make each job the place I want to be in for the rest of my life. And I've been steered into that I played for a coach that was at W&L for, decade after decade after decade. I played for a coach in high school who was there for a decade. All these all-time winningest coaches. Same thing with John Kress, all-time winningest coach. Same thing with Bob Johnson, all-time winningest coach. Same thing when I went to Colgate, all-time winningest coach. Guys that they wanted to coach, and they found their spot and they attack that with, hey, not worried about the next job. They're worried about the job they're in and making that the place they want to be in the rest of their life. And I sort of took that mentality. And I also, I got lucky early on. I worked for great people that made it enjoyable every day. I always felt like I was growing and learning, and they let me own certain tasks within the program. And so that helped me to stay where I was and not feel like I was looking for that next job. And, I think I do it because I love the relationships. I'm stimulated by building relationships with our players, with people in the community. I've been blessed to live in, really cool communities, and all very different. Charleston is different than DeLand, Florida, which is much different than, all those are different than Hamilton, New York, and then obviously Fort Wayne, more metropolitan city. But I think that mentality of make it the place you want to be in the rest of your life. And I think if you do that, you got a great chance of having success.
But after 8 years, you did leave. What prompted the move for you to head to Colgate?
Probably, and Emmett was in our circle of friends. He was at Navy when Nathan Davis and Jimmy Allen, two Emory and Henry guys, had gone there. So he had worked with them. So this was a friendship that we had developed over years at the Final Four and recruiting. Emmett's wife, Gail, who is, maybe my wife's best friend now. She was a coach at Georgetown when he was at Navy. So to a coaching family, that probably attracted us there. My sister went to Colgate, so I knew what a beautiful university that was. And then to progress my recruiting, I wanted to go to a place that was recruiting nationally, which Colgate, Patriot League, Ivy Leagues do. It's a great experience. I think, if you ask my two kids who are 10 and 13 or, what they want to do for the rest of their lives, they both would say, oh, I can't wait to be a coach, which they're probably crazy like us. But that's one of those things where, I just think that they recognize being around great people in those relationships you do. And so that kind of inspired it. And it was probably time. We were in Florida. I had kind of tried to get that next level job, maybe get to a Power 5, and, didn't work out from there, but also you got kind of stuck. Florida's a great place to recruit from because there's no one to the East, West, or the South to battle you in recruiting battles. Everything's a flight, unless you're in Jacksonville. Right. But that's the same thing as a coach. And so I wanted to just kind of grow my network and learn from another coach. And it was hard to leave Derek, though. That was really, really hard. And we had great friends down there, some of our best friends to this day.
Which part of the job in the early years did you enjoy the most? The teaching, the recruiting, anything else?
Anything associated with people. The teaching was great. I loved sharing the game, but it was probably more the helping behind the scenes, kind of building those relationships, whether it was, working through with guys that had, academic challenges, kind of inspiring them, or, the behind the scenes, getting guys to, become pros with how they operate. I do love getting on the floor, working with guys. We had a number of guys that, went on to play professionally when I was at Stetson, and, kind of helping guys pursue their dream of playing professionally. that's awesome. And then just the coaching fraternity. I'm a little bit old school in that, in terms of I love spending time on the phone with coaches, learning from other coaches. So many guys are so protective these days of what they do and won't share things online, what they do. If you got a clinic, I'll come speak at. I love it. And there's no secrets. I'll share whatever we do. I'm really proud of it, but you got to be able to coach, you got to be able to recruit to it, and teach the game. And it's all about stealing from other guys. But, the fraternity of the business is a big part of what I've enjoyed. And I hope we can maintain that. There's a lot of challenges going into that. Things have become very, very cutthroat. People don't share as much, and that's a shame. And my closest friends, like, we all really share, and I feel this fraternity in coaching with them.
2 years at Colgate. Emmett Davis let go after that 2011 season. I read you seriously considered getting out at that point. Was that the case?
Well, getting out really considered me. It's a hard business.
Yeah.
And it's, that was a sad day. I'm on a recruiting trip. And to this day, like, I don't know if you've really coached until you've been let go. That was really hard. My wife had a job she loved, the head coach at Hamilton College, beautiful school, right around the corner from Colgate. And she's literally throwing out the first pitch that day with her softball team in year 2, building their program. And I call her and say, I'm driving back from a recruiting visit. That's how ruthless it is. They don't even tell me before I'm going on this recruiting trip. I turn in my paperwork, and then we get let go, and I got to drive back and kind of figure out life. And she's down in Florida with her team coaching for the next week, trying to figure out, okay, what's next? And I pull out my yellow pad, and I write down every name I know in college coaching. And I became very relentless. I probably was never very aggressive hunting the next job until I didn't have a job. And I got my son's 2 years old, and my wife is pregnant with Lucy. And so talk about some challenges there. You got a 2-year-old, and you got a pregnant wife, and you got to find an income. And that's where, I'm blessed that I'm, well educated. I can do other things other than coach basketball. But, I found that, to be great at whatever, you got to have a passion towards it. I found my passion. I was, desperate to try and keep coaching. And on the way to my interview in Fort Wayne, I stopped at a high school in Kentucky and interviewed at Covington Catholic.
Wow.
Good job. Just over by Northern Kentucky.
Yep.
Their time frame was not going to be as quick as we wanted to be able to make a great decision with that. But I was really, really blessed to get this situation. It was close to my wife's home in Lima. And that's kind of where the next phase of our life ended up.
So Tony Jasic takes over there at IPFW. At the time, IPFW. You guys are going through more name changes. Like, people go through Kleenex up there. It seems like the last decade. But IPFW at the time, there in 2011, he gets promoted. How do you get together? What did you have a relationship with him?
There's it's a network. So I had Chris Holtman, who's now the head coach at Ohio State. We grew up in the Atlantic Sun together. He was at Gardner-Webb. I was at Stetson. We respected each other's programs. We both had kind of challenging, difficult jobs and had done really good jobs in them during our time there. And so had this relationship. And, he told me, he's like, hey, I got a friend who just got a head job. He's looking for somebody who has alternative recruiting markets. And I immediately thought of you and those Florida connections and what you have been able to do there. And so I called Tony. I'm actually on an interview at Army for their, they have 4 assistants, so their lowest spot. And Jimmy Allen had connected me with Zach Spiker, and Zach had offered me a job there, but it was not enough for a young family of 4 to live on in West Point. I mean, it was going to be a huge challenge from that regard. I'm in the the Thayer, staying in the general suite, which is pretty cool. Who knows who had slept in that room before us over the 100 years it had been open. And then I go down the lobby, and I'm interviewing with Tony, and I'm like, Tony, I just got to know, like, where am I on this hierarchy? I got a job here. I got to figure this out. I got a wife who loves her coaching. And he tells me, hey, shut up, or you're going to screw this thing up. Stop talking. You got the job. Just come here and meet me. Chris Holtman's convinced me to take you. And I've been following your career. You and I have sat together. You may not have known it on a couple occasions. And I respected, the conversations we shared. And that was a great relationship, man. He took a leap of faith with me, and together we did 3 years, did some really good things. We brought in some really good recruits. 5 Florida guys. I got a picture up here on the wall of that group. some all league guys that came in that first recruiting class, coupled with some really good Midwestern guys, and sort of that combination that kind of got our program going.
3 years there, and then he leaves for Jacksonville. Do you have any, I don't know if the right inkling's the right word, but was there any conversations? Was he open with you about, hey, I might be looking to move on, or was it?
Yeah,
hey guys,
we were a young program in terms of our evolution of going from D2 to D1. I mean, from independent to then the Summit League to then coaching contracts and different things like that. And without going into the weeds of it, like, it was a huge jump up for his family at the time with the contract they offered him at Jacksonville. We had really good Florida guys here in Fort Wayne. I mean, a bunch of all league guys from Florida. And so that was some of the attractiveness of, hey, Tony, through his staff and being able to attract these Florida guys to Fort Wayne. Sure enough, you can do it if you're down in Jacksonville. He offered me a job to go with him. There was a short hesitation there because of how the contract stuff all worked out. But then we took that next step here in Fort Wayne. I got a great AD. We've really developed the position here in Fort Wayne together from the different contracts that we've worked through. I mean, I just got an extension that got announced today, and that's really cool. And it's really grown from that standpoint. But then, as I took over, there were a lot of areas that, we've kind of taken the program to that next step from our foreign trips. We just got back from Portugal and Spain, and I've done 3 of those trips, and we've kind of taken that trip and gone on steroids with it. Actually, our Italy trip 4 years ago, I got published with the 2 professors on the academic class and curriculum that we put together with the 6-week independent studies that we did before we even went on the class. And then our players are presenting. It was when they were in Italy. It's now this last year when we went to Portugal and Spain. You're going to Sagrada Familia, and one of our players is out front, and he's got his 10-minute presentation on it. Next thing you know, our group, we took 41 people this year. And next thing you know, that 41 turns into 140 because everybody's like, hey, that guy knows what he's talking about. And you got a bunch of, 6'9", 260-pound guys rolling around with Mastadons on their shirts like, hey, what is this? And so it becomes really cool watching our guys get comfortable being uncomfortable. And the class was awesome. We did a blog online. We're posting videos, and with our 41 people, everybody's wives, had our AD, our CFO, our chief of staff, to our chancellor, who also helped teach the class all along, and just great relationship on. Like, what I've really tried to do here in Fort Wayne is, how do I base everything on relationships instead of being transactional? College athletics has become very transactional. And, that's not good. Like, there's always going to be able to somebody, who's going to be able to pay you more NIL, or, give you more. Maybe there's a few more fans in the stands or something like that. There's always something more, but how do you build relationships to where people just want to stay? They have the joy of your program. And I feel like we've really been able to do that here in Fort Wayne.
Bob Johnson coming through.
Bob Johnson, exactly.
Yeah.
I got a great article on the back there that I just hung up. You probably can't see it, but it's gratitude. I got offered asked during the pandemic to write an article on Pay It Forward in the Fort Wayne magazine. And it was all about Bob Johnson and kind of what I'm paying forward. I mean, every day I feel like I'm paying forward Bob Johnson and that sort of life skills, get comfortable being uncomfortable. The ballroom dancing I told about offline. I mean, that was cool. Our guys got into it this summer in the ballroom dance. Our 3 golf lessons, man, there's some horrific golf swings. But I want these guys, they're going to be doing business one day and doing it on the golf course. Like, let's get them exposed to this so that, they're comfortable doing that. They took the golf etiquette lesson so that they're not fearful of going to play golf because they don't know the etiquette on the golf course. We did dining etiquette this summer. I don't want them to ever be in an interview, a lunch or dinner interview, and not be comfortable or not get the job because they don't know, the proper etiquette from, what you do dining and so forth, and show their, have a confidence about them. And I think the more you get exposed to, the more confident you become. And some of that life skill stuff has really helped us gain the confidence on the floor too.
In 2011, you weren't sure if you were going to get to coach anymore. And then 3 years later, you're the
It's
head
amazing
coach.
story. And I tell people all the time, and, I've had friends who have lost jobs along the way for all sorts of reasons. I mean, that's college coaching, unfortunately. And man, I've been so active reaching out to guys and sharing my story to kind of inspire, and be like, hey, there could be a rainbow at the end, and I'm very blessed. I mean, 3 years later, I'm one of 358. I mean, I got on my phone right here. I got coach the team. I got one of 353. It's a few years ago. Ken Palm's updated. All right. And I got control what you can control. And every day, I try to live by those. And, I tell our staff, hey, I don't care what recruiting call you're on. I don't care what you're doing behind the scenes with your door closed. If a player comes through, like, open the door, build the relationship. And the only reason we close the door is that we got to badmouth who we are so we can actually schedule some games.
Gosh, it's just the nature of the profession, sort of the uneasiness of, to your point, transactional business. It's a results driven business. There can be as much, big picture, and we're trying to help kids and we're trying to turn them into men and this, that, and the other. But for your bosses, ultimately, you've got to win games. And to have that, I mean, your world rocked there in 2011, and now you're a head coach. Stability almost feels like too strong of a word, because, the stability is always temporary in a way if you're not winning enough. But did it feel different that maybe I don't need to be a professional nomad anymore, or work, like it felt more settled?
Well, and I really hadn't been a nomad. It was just that 2-year stop at Colgate. I'd had those 8 years prior at Stetson. It took me 16 years to become a head coach. I really appreciated the job and my position. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, like, I took on a job, like, make this a job you want to be in for the rest of your life. I remember at that time, it was my last year as an assistant. They just changed some of the rules saying, you can afford your programs, training tables. And I remember guys on staff saying, oh man, we just fall further behind. And I was like, guys, no, we don't. We live in a city of 350,000 people. We're the only Division I program in the city. Like, we can roll up our sleeves. And now we got 25 restaurants that cater in a training table lunch every day after practice. I mean, we have a casino night that raises 6 digits every year. So we get to fundraise to go, to Barcelona and Portugal and bring 41 people. I just had a guy leave our office who's making our championship rings for this last year, winning the Horizon League in year 2. And that's all going to be paid for with donor funded rings. During COVID, like, we get hit with all different kind of furloughs and stuff, and we're able to, help ourselves to limit some of that things and some of the hurt, because we fundraised to have this stuff. And that's the people of Fort Wayne who bought in. But you got to come to our casino night. I just got done fishing. Go look at my Twitter. I caught 3 trout over 32 inches. I can't even count how many we caught. And it was Rockwell Springs Trout Club in Ohio. And one of my college roommates, Graham Fry, who lives in Austin, Texas, flew into town. We auctioned off this experience, brought a donors with us to his Trout Springs, had a great 2-day trip there. He bought it at our casino night, while I had somebody else with a high school classmate of mine who's a producer at ESPN at the US Open. And he and his wife got to go to the US Open, while I also had another donor using her house in Newport. Well, I had another donor who was staying with my real estate agent who played here at IPFW, who was at their lake house. All auction items are casino night. Just people, from my tree of being in college coaching and through making friends, and then the community here. Next week, I'm going to Churchill Downs with a group of like 25 Fort Wayne people. One of my next door neighbor's cousin has a box there, and all these things kind of work together. I got so many people that have been supportive of our program, because it's just been relationship based. Like, hey, have real conversations with people, get them to buy in what you're doing. And a lot of these people, man, they're not, they maybe weren't Fort Wayne fans or Purdue Fort Wayne fans or IPFW fans prior to this, but they believe in the people. They believe in our stories. They've gotten to know face to face with our players and they buy in. And like, that's what's been awesome, man. This has not been one person creating this thing. I got a great wife who is, I mean, she's the best coach in our family. She supports me. I mean, she is tremendous and my kids are all in. And then what's happened is we've just paid all this energy forward and we got a huge network of people that are Fort Wayne fans behind us, supporting us. And that's been really cool watching this thing develop.
Coach, last question before I let you go that we ask everybody for the young coach just getting into the business that one day wants to be where you are and lead their own Division I program. What is the best piece of advice you can pass along?
Man, don't be transactional, be relationship based. Like I got three assistants here that I met, years before I hired them in a setting where they impressed me. And I told them, I said, hey, here's my number, build a relationship with me. Don't just call me every April, build a relationship. Don't be transactional, be relationship wise and send me information through the year. Maybe it's a text, they have my cell, send me a podcast that you figure out, send me a play action, send me name of a recruit that maybe doesn't fit your program and build a relationship over time because recruiting and coaching is more about, building the relationships over time and consistency with what you do than it is some simple transactions, not what player you can get me today. And if you do that, like things are going to turn out well. And like Adam Blaylock, who's on my staff, I met him. He was a Panola junior college assistant. We were the last two guys in the gym in Dallas at a JUCO event. And I look over there, it's he and I, where there are no seats. We're sitting up on the bleachers way up top as they didn't even have seats for us watching this JUCO jamboree. I'm looking to talk to somebody in between games and dead balls. I go sit next to them. It's like 4:00. Everybody else has gone home. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know. I guess they're decided they want to watch the last 3 games of the day. We're watching till the end. And I'm like, hey man, like, what are you doing here? Well, he's like, I got 3 players there. They're playing. I'm driving them here, all this stuff. I said, build a relationship with me. And, I'm impressed, I just enjoyed the conversation. 3 years later, he's on my coaching staff and he's phenomenal, man. Rolls up his sleeves, will do anything. And those are the kind of guys I want in my corner, the guys who are not transactional or relationship based.